Is the engine in my BMW i8 bad? If I had to guess at this moment, I would say pretty confidently that it is. And I got the car cheap, so it's no surprise that you get what you pay for. And while I sound a bit dramatic, all signs thus far point south. Now, after getting this car to the point where we could safely drive it, just moments into the first ride, it popped up with this warning. And well, the last i8 I had did the same exact thing. And even with the help of a BMW dealer tech, it took several days to finally figure out that our engine was bad because it got so hot so many times over that the head gasket wasn't just blown, but the cylinder head was cooked too. But back to the current i8, when I initially got this car, it didn't want to drive simply because it had a broken door latch. With the door not closed, the car wouldn't drive an inch before it would throw itself into park, so we rebuilt the latch using a $5 hobby motor, a 3D printed actuator arm, and replaced a missing fuse, and now the car goes into drive and stays there until... This thing sounds like it's gonna blow up. Is that the engine? Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Now the second I saw this warning, I pulled to the side of the road, shut the car off, waited, and pulled up the car's diagnostic menu that tells you exactly how hot the engine was. Since there's no actual coolant temperature gauge in this $150,000 BMW. And what do you know? Just 126 degrees Celsius. That's nearly 260 degrees Fahrenheit. To put things in perspective, this Dodge Viper's coolant gauge goes up to 250 degrees. But to make matters worse, I can only imagine that I wasn't the first person to experience the same issue. Since I got the car after it bounced around a bunch of dealer auctions where it went unsold for some sort of time, and then, well, I paid 25 grand for it. Yeah, this is it. This is the car. You know this car. So you heard about this car before?
Yeah, it's got me running from shop to shop.
This all is seeming like a sequel to a really bad movie. The movie I've already lived through. It's nearly the same exact scenario as I had before, except this time the car made a really nasty noise at the same time it flashed that warning on the dash. Luckily, I figured the source of the noise very quick. It was just the $500 carbon fiber splash shield that the last guy left loose.
There's not even any screws holding this in. You can see where it goes right up there. Screws missing in the front, screws missing in the back. We've only got the ones in the middle holding it up. All right, here we go. There's that. And the nice thing about removing that cover is that it only exposes the high voltage battery. So that means that it will be more efficiently cooled now, and also will only expose the extraordinarily delicate coolant lines that are known to crack at the metal portions. Look, somebody's already messed with all this stuff. See all those hose clamps right there? Those are all aftermarket.
So if this one does have a blown head gasket, you can bet that I'll be sending it straight back to the auction, because even though it was cheap, it wasn't cheap enough to deal with this big of a headache. And while I really like the BMW i8 and think it's a very unique supercar, everyone seems to make fun of me for even calling it a supercar. As a matter of fact, when I brought home the first one I had, my wife said that its 3-cylinder engine reminded her of me. That while it's small, it tries really hard. And while that bit of info might have exposed me in 4K, I still got that big dash cam energy because of Vantrue's E1 Pro, a small but very powerful 4K dash camera. Despite the size, the image quality is so satisfying thanks to a Sony Starvis 2 image sensor, and of course with Plate Pix technology. No matter what time of day it is, license plates stay easily legible. Included with the E1 Pro is a CPL filter, which eliminates that glare from your windshield and keeps the picture as clean as this car was before it was repossessed. And with built-in 5 GHz Wi-Fi and the Vantrue app, I can instantly download the clips I need straight to my phone so quick, it seems like it happens before you'd even have the time to plug it in. I love how stealthy this is because it makes it so easy to install, and once it's there, you hardly ever notice it. And even though it's small, it gives me huge peace of mind because it comes with that amazing 4K image quality that Vantrue is known for. And right now, you can get the lowest price of the year on the E1 Pro over at Amazon when you hit my link down in the description box. My viewers are going to get an additional discount to bring the price even lower. All you got to do is hit that link down in the description box and check out Vantrue's E1 Pro. Now, after the car overheated, I did all the basics when it came to checking for a bad head gasket. I first checked for smoke or water coming from the tailpipes, and there was nothing. Then I opened the engine cover and checked under the cap. Since there's no dipstick for any sort of milky coolant milkshake stuff, it looked just fine. And then I began to start looking for my tools to pull the coils and spark plugs. And then I stopped myself because we've been through all this before. No matter what old school test you throw at this car to see if it's got a failed head gasket, it just doesn't work like any other modern car. It's so small, it's so low emissions that even when you pull the plugs and you scope the cylinder and look for a clean piston or run a compression test on it, it'll all come back fine. The only thing that's worked for me is the chemical block test. The test fluid in this vial changes from a purplish color to yellow if exhaust gases are present in your cooling system, which means you're dealing with the blown head gasket, warped cylinder head, or a cracked block, which on this car is catastrophic. And this is exactly what happened on my old i8. Now, the test fluid I'm using on this i8, while it came out of the bottle a little bit more green than I'd like, likely because it's just old, it still should work. And since the fluid changes colors both ways, I just hoped that it would shift to that sort of purpley blue and nothing else. After several minutes of getting the engine up to temperature, the color never shifted. As a matter of fact, there wasn't a single air bubble that went through the vial, which is very odd. If there were any air pockets, whether just naturally in the cooling system or if there were any from exhaust gases, you'd have definitely seen this fluid bubble up, no matter what color it changed. In my opinion, this is better than the fluid immediately turning yellow, but if we're being honest, it's inconclusive more than anything. Now, the next thing we got to do is something we should have done a lot earlier, and that's scan our trouble codes. There's an obvious check engine light on the dashboard. And right here, this permanent code is for the map thermostat. It's telling us that it's either dead or the electrical connector running to it is problematic. Most of the other ones are related to us having the door apart to fix the lock. But this one, about the thermostat, gives us a great place to start. So we've got a clear target here, and that's to remove and inspect the thermostat, a job which I'm very familiar with on this car, but I need to get a few specific tools to get it done. So I plugged the car in, which worked with no issue at all, and I waited for the battery to get a full charge so I could at least use its EV mode to drive it to the farm. And while it charged, I went to go look for something. Here in my garage, I have a bunch of junk that I refuse to get rid of, and look what's right up on top. This is a water pump off of my old i8. Now, I think this is the one that came off the car, but if you remember the history of it, someone had already changed that water pump before we got it. Then we went and ordered a water pump assembly just to get this guy right here. Here is an i8 thermostat. There's our electrical component to it right there. And besides a little bit of dust on this thing, I'm assuming it'll work just fine. Now, since this is a map-controlled thermostat, it's controlled by the engine's computer, which sends an electrical signal to the heating element inside the thermostat housing. That element warms it so that it can open earlier if the ECU decides the engine needs cooling sooner. And in theory, it should still behave like a normal thermostat and open from temperature alone, but when I dropped it in boiling water well over 90 degrees Celsius, it didn't even open. And that's likely because this style of thermostat relies heavily on that signal from the engine's ECU. Without that electrical input, it might not function properly in a stovetop test, or I simply just didn't get it hot enough. But with all these extra layers of cooling tech comes more potential failure points, which could easily lead to overheating. And besides this, also consider that the BMW i8 has to send coolant from the radiator and reservoir from the front of the car to the water pump and thermostat assembly all the way in the back of the car. Remember how comically small the water pump impeller is? There's no way it can move the amount of coolant this car needs as quick as it needs it, so it relies on an auxiliary water pump, which fixes the problem while adding yet another vulnerability. Either way, this car charged up pretty quick, and I'm anxious to get it torn down, so with a full battery, I put it in eDrive and hit the road. You know, worst case scenario, if this thing does have a bad engine, at least someone could drive it 9 miles at a time in just electric mode. This is pretty good. It still says I have 7 miles of electric range. We've made it to the farm. So if anything, the electric battery actually seems halfway decent on this thing. I'm having a bit of deja vu looking at this car in the same position that my old one was sitting when we diagnosed its head gasket to be bad. And I can't tell you how many times between myself and the crew over at Eurocharge pulled and reinstalled the thermostat, replaced the thermostat. in this car, and it seems to be one of the common things everybody starts with is a thermostat swap. Obviously, since we have that fault code, that's what we're going to have to start with as well. And it's as simple as taking that wheel off the back corner, taking the wheel liner out, and then we should have some access through the wheel well to get to the water pump assembly. Gotta love the build quality of this car. The whole entire shock absorber boot just in pieces. This is on its last leg, but we can live with that for right now. What we're worried about is right here. You can see how pretty simple it is to get to the thermostat housing. It is in between the frame here. A little bit of a tight space to work in, but with some extensions and things, we should be fine. I'm looking, and the connector's all in there nicely, but just look at everything here. Look at the bolts that are on that housing. They look brand new, and look at the pulley on the water pump. This thing is not original to the car. It's too fresh. I hate seeing that. It makes me think that someone maybe tried this before they went and ditched the car at the auction. The whole entire water pump, that is definitely a new part, man. All right, just taking a look at our part on the outside of the car. There's just 4 bolts we need to take out, plus the hose that goes in here and there. Those are those easy BMW metal clips, so hopefully that's pretty simple. And I'm thinking what we're going to do is this. We're going to install this without a thermostat. So here's the connector for this thermostat housing. I'm trying to get it out of place, but you can see the shield has been broken off and the wires are exposed. Now they look intact all the way through this portion here, but then they've been rubbing up against the chassis, like right here. I want to get this closer and just see. I mean, from a distance, it all looks all right. But another thing we could do is just plug in the use piece that we know worked before, clear our codes, and see if it comes back instantly. All right, got a long 1/4 inch wobble with then a telescoping head on the end, because these are all at funny angles, but that should work. And they shouldn't be in all that tight. Oh my God, they're not in tight at all. Oh no. Guys, every mistake in this car leads to a new discovery. I look down for my socket and look at this. Do you see that thing down there? Just hanging out in the shield? That is loose. That's the pump that circulates the coolant. I don't think that's supposed to be mounted there. Either way, I'm annoyed because I want my socket. I think it's more valuable in the car at this point. All right, these are super loose. There we go. Come on. What the? Oh my God, this thermostat's cooked. Look at this thing. Holy jeez. Well, there's problem number 1. Look at that thermostat. It came out in a million pieces. And what I don't like, there's gunk all over it now. Is the gunk sealer or is the gunk like rubber? Ooh, look at that. Get over here, you son of a bitch. Come on. All right, here's our housing, what's left of everything. And look, this is why there's no flow. This thermostat broke and it's completely blocking the flow of anything happening. Let's see here. It's like stuck on here too. All right. Let's see what that looks like in there. And so there's our problem for sure. I've never seen a thermostat come out of a car like this ever before. But then again, I've never seen a thermostat that uses so much plastic. And that's exactly how this broke. Do you see down here these little teeth that hold the bottom portion in place? Well, obviously, 2 of them got weak, and either this is just from normal heat cycles or this thing saw a lot of heat along with a lot of pressure, which is obviously extremely possible if this comes apart and then completely blocks off all your flow of coolant. But this is so wild, and you can see like when it let loose, this must have jammed itself into the engine and it's completely warped and bent. the spring breaking right off the top of this. I mean, this is a very flawed design in my opinion, and if I were an i8 owner that regularly drove my car, I'd consider just replacing the thermostat as a regular wear item. So I've been bouncing back and forth with the idea of running a thermostat, not running a thermostat. At first I was thinking we were going to find a normal looking thermostat that just was, you know, electronically failed. Obviously we didn't find that, and so I'm like, all right, well, we got a good reason to replace the thermostat. But now I'm like, this car's got a high-strung little motor. It needs as much cooling help as it can get. We still don't know if it's got a blown head gasket. It's relatively simple to pull this assembly out. Anyway, I think we should run it no thermostat. And by running with no thermostat, once we get this all reassembled and hooked up, we'll know within seconds whether or not our head gasket is good with that block tester, because there'll be no restrictions. All right, everything's hooked back up, and the more I look in this area, the more I'm noticing that definitely there is a trim piece missing. You could see a couple of studs hanging out here and down there where something bolts in. But hey, we're running at this point with no thermostat, with no undercover. We basically got the lightest i8 in the world right now. Well, the next appropriate step is to pressure bleed this system with no thermostat. We should have a completely free-flowing coolant system. I want to test our head gasket first. Man, this stuff is really light. If we just aerate it a little bit, I just got a little bit of air. I'm just going to send it in this way. Regular air should reverse the color. Instead of it turning like yellow, it should turn it more blue. Let's see. Is that better? That's 100% better. All right, let's go with that. As these cars age, it almost just highlights how shameful the manufacturers can get when they're designing a car that costs someone $150,000 new, that they hide the latches to open your hood, and then they make you jam a screwdriver into the hinges just to keep it propped up. Now, we're supposed to do that to both sides, but we are not going to bother with that right now. We just want to see what our sniffer tells us. We just fit our plunger on the bottom here. Now again, we're low on coolant, so in theory this car would overheat again, but if there is a bad head gasket, I'm assuming that when this engine turns on, we will see this thing change colors probably within 30 seconds to a minute tops. 3, 2, 1, engine on. Come on. This thing is still as could be. I can't believe how still the test fluid is staying. It should bubble up a little bit, and my old i8 would bubble up like instantly. But then again, it had a blown head gasket. This car's been running over 2 minutes now. I cannot believe that there's no bubbles at all. I bought this kit specifically because of my first BMW i8. When we were trying to figure out why it wouldn't stop overheating, I figured that at the very least, this thing would pressure bleed the car correctly. And that's the other funny thing online when you read about the BMW i8. Everyone is convinced, oh, you're just bleeding it the wrong way. You're just bleeding it the wrong way. But to those people I ask, have you ever taken your thermostat out of the car? All right, I'm just trying to find the right size cap here, and then we can get to work. Turns out this blue one was the right one all along. Just got to push it in there. Now, typically when you're using this tool, your cooling system is empty. You're going to suck all the air out and replace it with water, but really we still have most of the coolant left in our system. All we lost is what was back in the back half of the engine. This still should work to a certain extent. It'll make it a bit more finicky and messy, but as you can see here, our upper radiator hose is completely collapsed, so it is still removing the air out of the system. Here's how I prime the system. While this is still pulling a vacuum, look, I'll just put a little bit of water through the line here, so now it won't suck up any air when we go to actually vacuum fill it. All right, let's shut this. First, we'll close the valve, and there's our air pressure off. And now with our primed water line in a gallon of distilled water, we turn it. It's filling the system right now. All right, you can see our hose is back to shape there, and
While this wasn't as dramatic as it could have been if the system was empty, I do think a big part of our problem is that this remained full. You know, our coolant reservoir remained full, and probably coolant up to the front half of the car stayed all intact. It was the coolant that we lost out over at the engine, and so that could pose a problem. But I think for right now, let's just get that coolant pump flowing. Let's get the car on a quick drive. We'll really closely monitor the temperature so we don't overheat. But if somehow we're lucky and we don't actually have a blown head gasket, I think we'll be able to confirm that just with this initial drive. Come on. You know, another question I have, why does BMW hide the ability for you to look at your darn temperatures, your coolant temperatures? That's absolutely ridiculous. All right, here we go. We're on. Car's on drive. We put it into sport mode here, and that kicks the engine over permanently. While we still can't read what's on our iDrive screen, we're not so worried about that right now. We want to keep our eyes right on that coolant temp. When it gets to about 75 degrees, let's check in. Let's push it a little. All right. Oh my God, look at that. Look at that, guys. Okay, we're not out of the woods yet, but I can tell you, on the i8s I've had that did have blown head gaskets, you never ever once saw the temperatures lower. And look, it just went from 85, 80, oh my goodness. We're now hanging around the 70s. Right after fixing the head gasket in my old i8, I saw the temperatures go as high as the mid-90s before they'd fall back down. We're not hardly driving this car real hard right now, but look at this. This is absolutely beautiful. This is beautiful. We're good. We're good. I'm calling it. If you'd asked me hours ago to bet money on the fact that we had a blown head gasket, I would have bet a lot of money on a blown head gasket. There's no way a head gasket survived 100 and what that was, 30 degrees Celsius, 126 degrees Celsius, something crazy like that. And so, well, I should stop talking because we're into the 90s now. We're into the 90s. Okay, 93, 94, 95. 90s, uh-oh. I don't like that. I need you to fall. I need you to fall. Okay, come on down, baby. Like I said, when we fixed the other i8, I did see coolant temperatures here. Okay, we're down back to 90, okay. All right, let's push it real quick. I'm gonna put my foot down most of the way. Wow, it feels way quicker than I remember, but that's probably because I never drove my car because it didn't work. Oh, there's some high temperatures. All right, let's do that again. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Wow, this car feels way quicker than I remember. I'm sorry for all you guys that don't think this is a supercar. When it works, it is most definitely a supercar, in my opinion. I mean, think about an old Ferrari. It's got as much horsepower as this. This is way quicker because it's got a hybrid drive. I don't care how many cylinders it has. The engine's in the back. It makes engine noises. They might be fake. It's still a supercar. After a pretty tough test drive, look at this. We're at 80 degrees Celsius. This is beautiful. Our head gasket is good. And I am shocked. I can think of a handful of times I've gotten lucky buying some of these exotic wholesale cars, but I've never felt any luckier than this moment right here. I was convinced that this engine was toast. I would bet you that the dealer that sold me this car thought that the engine was toast. I mean, it's just such a prevalent issue on the BMW i8, at least I think it is, and it's simply because the second that warning light comes on the dashboard, people keep driving the car. So if you have an i8, number one, maybe you want to consider pulling your thermostat out. Number two, if you don't like that idea, at least replace the thing as preventative maintenance. But number three, if that warning ever comes on the dashboard, make it a priority to pull off
on the side of the road. You probably experienced a time where your water pump failed or your serpentine belt broke and the car started overheating. And well, I've seen it and I've done it many times where you limp a car home that is overheating. This engine just can't handle it, and I think it's all because the size of it. When you got a regular V6 or a V8, it starts to get hot. Well, there's just so much more surface area within that engine, so much more metal to spread that heat with a lot bigger of an oil capacity, which also grabs onto that heat and just allows it to dissipate slowly. Now apply that same level of heat, but to a shoebox. Now guys, if you are as excited as I am that I can actually drive this car and enjoy it more than a few miles because its cooling system is currently working, be sure to hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we're not done with this thing. There's still a bunch of other warning lights on the dashboard. There's one very strange one I've never experienced before, one that points to the car having a potential odometer rollback. When you're subscribed, you'll be the first to know when I come out with the new videos on the BMW i8 and a couple other auction gambles I just recently picked up. Now guys, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching today. I'll catch you very soon.